With all of these food delivery platforms, you might be wondering, well, which one is good? Which one is bad? Which one pays the most? Which one will I be more busy with? If I had to sign up for one, which one would I do? Which I highly suggest you sign up for all of them at the same time. But I am going to give you my thoughts based on my market here in Vaudreuil, Quebec, Canada. And this way you'll be able to see what my ranking is for the top 3 food delivery apps in my area. And maybe the same applies to you in your area. The only way to know is really to sign up, drive with them, and figure out your market. But hopefully these factors will help you in determining which app is best for your area, or at least it's going to make you think a little bit, what is it for my area? Let me try to rank them as well. So today we're going to be talking about DoorDash, Uber Eats, and SkipTheDishes. Now, SkipTheDishes is the equivalent as Grubhub in the United States. So let me know in the comments, do you drive with either of these 3 delivery apps? And if you do, let me know which one. If you don't, maybe you might want to at the end of this video. So let's get started. First thing that we're going to talk about is transparency. I feel like transparency is the thing that all of us drivers want. We want to know how much are we being paid, where are we going, which restaurant is it that we're dealing with, and not all of these apps, surprisingly enough, gives you that information. So first, let's start with DoorDash. DoorDash is one of the apps where you're going to know which merchant that you're dealing with. You're going to know approximately where your customer lives. However, the one thing that I can say with transparency is that they hide their tips after $4. So if your customer tips you $5 on your offer screen, you're only going to see that the customer technically tipped you $4. And then when you complete the order, that's when you're going to see what the actual tip was that the customer gave you. So for DoorDash, I'm not too happy about that one. Now let's go with Uber Eats. Uber Eats, there's a few things that when it comes to transparency, that's not the greatest with Uber Eats. Number one, they also hide tips. However, they hide tips after $8. So at least they give you a little bit more information than DoorDash did. However, they only give you the cross streets for your drop off. They don't give you the exact location. So this is why, in my opinion, they're a little bit worse than DoorDash when it comes to transparency. And then the last one is SkipTheDishes. SkipTheDishes is full transparency. They give you the drop off, they give you the exact price. There's no hidden tip, there's no nothing. So in my opinion, SkipTheDishes would be number 1, DoorDash would be number 2, and Uber would be number 3 when it comes to transparency. Now we're going to talk about the offer screen. I've seen both offer screens when it comes with DoorDash. I'll speak about the old one primarily, but I'll also touch on a few things with the new offer screen. So with the old offer screen, you're going to be able to zoom in to see where you're dropping off. However, you won't see the address directly on the offer screen. You can see that once you've accepted the order. Another thing you'll see is the item count, which is really important when you want to determine, is this a big order or is it a small order? You're going to see your pay. Once again, there is that hidden tip that you need to keep in mind. You're going to see the kilometers driven, and you're going to see when they expect you to deliver this order by. This could be good information because it can tell you, is the merchant going to be slow or is the customer really far? And you might not factor that in with the kilometers, but at least the time will be able to tell you that information. Now, when it comes with the new offer screen, one of the big differences is that the item count is no longer there. So this is valuable information that, let's say if you had an order from a really nice fancy restaurant and you saw that there were 12 items, you'll jump on that order. But if you see that there's only 1 item, you might not jump on that order. So not having the item count is going to be a very big deterrent when it comes to this new offer screen. Now, this was for DoorDash. If we go to Uber Eats, Uber Eats shows you the cross street where you're delivering, so you don't have the exact address, and you never will have the exact address until you pick up the order. You can zoom in as well to see approximately where you're going to be delivering your order. You will have your pay. Once again, there is that hidden tip factor of $8. You will have the kilometers, and you'll have the time. Now, when they give you the time, this really is important, especially with Uber Eats, because they really factor in the time that the restaurant takes to prepare the order and for you to drop it off. The only thing that I don't like with the offer screen on Uber Eats is that you do not have a lot of time to accept your order. You have to gather all of this information and make a really good decision in a really short amount of time versus all the other 3 apps. Skip the Dishes is my favorite when it comes to the offer screen. You have the exact address for the customer drop off and for the pickup. You have the pay with no hidden tip factors at all. You have the kilometers that you're going to be driving. You have your acceptance rate directly on the screen. The only problem with Skip is that's the only time that you'll see your acceptance rate, which is kind of annoying, but at the end of the day, acceptance rate doesn't really matter, but it's still a good indicator to know what exactly your acceptance rate is. So that is the only time that you'll see it. You're going to see your delivery time as well when they anticipate that you will be delivering your order to your customer. And there is a long time for you to accept an order with Skip the Dishes. So in my opinion, Skip the Dishes would be number 1 when it comes to the order screen. DoorDash would be number 2, and then Uber Eats would be number 3. Now let's talk about the schedule. Now the schedule is something that you might think like, oh, I'm an independent contractor, I should be able to go work whenever I want. Not so fast. First, let's talk about DoorDash. With DoorDash, you have the option to either schedule yourself, which comes out about a week in advance, or you can dash now if it is busy. So this is one thing that you have to keep in mind when it comes to DoorDash. If you don't have one of their specialty programs where you're able to dash now, you can only decide, hey, I want to go dash right now if it's busy and your screen shows pink or dark red. When it comes to Uber Eats, there's no schedule. You can decide, I want to go and do some Uber orders right now. Jump on the app and you're good to go. So it is amazing with Uber that they do not have a schedule. They really understand what it is to be an independent contractor and work when you want to work. Skip the Dishes does have a schedule, and they do have an option kind of like DoorDash with the Dash Now. However, they call it available or not available. So you do have the schedule that comes out every single Thursday with Skip the Dishes. So you set your availabilities before Wednesday at a specific time. You'll get emails, you'll get notifications. They always remind you. But once you set your schedule for the upcoming week, on Thursday, you'll actually get your schedule given to you. They will assign time slots for you. That's where it's a little bit different. It's kind of like work. Like you say when you're available to work, and then they say, okay, well, we need you here, 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 and here. Here's what your schedule is. You can always go in and remove some of your schedules. You can add more if there's more on the availability page. And if it is busy, the screen will be green and you will be able to go online and make yourself available and then take orders. So in my opinion, when it comes to the scheduling, Uber will be number 1, no schedule. DoorDash would be number 2, and then Skip would be number 3. Now let's talk about the base pay. The base pay on all of these apps differ completely. You have DoorDash. In my area, the base pay is $4. Now we're talking about Canadian. I know in the US, sometimes it's $2, $2.50, $3, whatever the case might be. In my area, it is $4, 4 Canadian dollars, right? And that is my base pay. Straightforward, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. There's no guessing, no nothing like that. With Uber Eats, you do have what they call a fare, which is made up by your base pay and also your trip supplement. Now it's about $3. It's usually $3, but there are some times where your fare can be more than $3. And then on other occasions, your fare can actually be less than $3. So you have to be careful with that. Whenever you see an order, think to yourself that it'll be $3, and then whatever additional that you see, that is your tip, but don't be surprised if it's a little bit different. It's a little tricky to figure out how exactly Uber decides to calculate their fare. And then lastly, Skip the Dishes, you have your transit pay. In my area, it is $4.45. Now with all of these apps, you do have a little difference depending on the distance that you're going. So let's say if you're going really far, then your trip supplement will be higher, your base pay with DoorDash will be higher, and your transit pay with Skip will be higher. So it is factored in when you have to travel really far, but these are the basics amount for, let's say, an order that's like 1 or 2 kilometers away. Now, in my opinion, the ranking for the base pay, obviously, I'm just going to go based on the amounts, and Skip the Dishes will be number 1 because it's $4.45. And then after that, you would have DoorDash with number 2 at $4. And then you would have Uber at number 3 with $3. Ah, coincidental, right? Now I'm going to talk about the tips that I've seen and that I've received, because I know that for a lot of people, this could be different. I've seen some people receive some tips that I have never seen in my life on DoorDash. So I will just talk about my experience, but do know that it could be completely different for you. So on DoorDash, I would say that the tip varies. Obviously, you do have customers that do not give you a tip on all of these platforms. That is just universal, right? But then you'll have customers that will give you like, $1 or $2 tip. And then you'll have the ones that'll give you $4 or $5 or $6 tip. I would say that that's usually the range for me when it comes to DoorDash. I would usually get either like a $2 or $3 tip. These are the orders that I would take. Obviously, there are some that are $1 and I don't take those. And then the highest would maybe be like a $6 or $8 that I might see on DoorDash. When it comes to Uber Eats, customers are let me correct myself. The customers that tip well are very, very generous on Uber Eats. Now, obviously, you will get the ones that don't give you a tip. You will get the ones that give you $1 or $2 tip. But then you will also often see customers give you a percentage based on their total, and they tend to order a lot. So I've seen tips on Uber that are $15, $20, $30. I never see this on DoorDash. So this is why I feel like the tips on Uber are definitely a lot higher than the tips that I see on DoorDash. And then lastly, with SkipTheDishes, it varies. The one thing that I like with DoorDash and with SkipTheDishes is that there's something that they can't do. They can't remove the tip afterwards. With Uber, there's a possibility that they can remove the tip. So even if you deliver the order, the customer has an hour to change their tip. So they can remove it and then you get nothing. Mind you, you can always contact Uber and tell them, hey, this is the contract that I had with you and I need you to abide by this price. And then most times they'll give you back your tip. But on DoorDash and Skip, you don't have to worry about that. That's not a worry. So with SkipTheDishes, they cannot remove the tip. And I feel it's kind of like DoorDash. The tip ranges. Obviously, there's the no tips, there's the low tips, but then you might get the tips that are like $6 or $7 or $8. But I have received higher tips on Skip than on DoorDash. So I've also received the $12, the $15 on SkipTheDishes. So in my opinion, when it comes to tips, the ranking would be number 1 is Uber, number 2 would be SkipTheDishes, and then number 3 would be DoorDash. Now we're going to talk about the frequency of orders. So the amount of orders that you'll actually receive during a shift. Obviously, this will vary greatly depending on your market because it depends on what percentage of the market each one of these applications hold. In my case, DoorDash gives you a lot of orders. They really do. You're not going to have a shift on DoorDash where you're not going to receive an order unless you put yourself on pause and you're multi-apping. That's a different story. But if you just have DoorDash on, you're definitely going to receive an order. They might not all be good, but at least you will get a ping. Uber has a lot of orders. There is no way that you can turn on Uber and not get an order. No way whatsoever. And with Uber, you decline one, you'll get one right immediately after. You decline it again, you'll get another one right immediately after. It's insane the amount of orders that Uber has. And you can also get triple stacks with Uber, which goes to show how many orders they actually have to fulfill. Now, when it comes to SkipTheDishes, there have been many times where I've had a shift with Skip and I have not received an order, not one. So in this case, when it comes to the amount of orders that you will get, my ranking would be number 1 for Uber, number 2 for DoorDash, and then number 3 for SkipTheDishes. Now let's talk about incentives. I know we spoke about pay before, but I didn't want to get into the incentives because that's a completely different story. When it comes to DoorDash, you have peak pay. Peak pay, what it is let's say you complete an order between 4 p.m. and 8 p.m. and there's a peak pay of $1. Every single order is going to pay you an additional $1. It's straightforward, straight to the point. You take your base pay, you add your peak pay, and then you add whatever tip, and that's what you're going to be getting. When it comes to Uber, you have quests and you have boosts. So the quest is pretty much like a peak pay, depending on what time frame that they gave you, what location that you're in, and what order that you decide to take. You can get a bonus for every single order. Sometimes it's complete 3 orders to get a certain amount. Sometimes it's 2 orders to get a certain amount. If you notice that on DoorDash and on Uber that they overlap, you can get both incentives at the same time. That has happened to me so many times when it comes to Uber. I've had one incentive that it was, complete 4 orders, you get a certain amount, but then complete 2 orders and you get another amount. And I would get both, which is amazing when it happens. So you have your Quest and then you have your Boost. Your Boost is a multiplier on your orders. We don't have Boosts in my area. So I would say don't rely on your Boosts. If there's one, yay. If there isn't, okay. That's okay. That's totally fine. When it comes to SkipTheDishes, they have a few more incentives. They have what you call a top up. So that means if your acceptance rate is over 80%, which we all know acceptance rate doesn't really matter. You shouldn't take, well, in my opinion, you shouldn't take bad orders just to ensure that your acceptance rate stays over 80%. But that is really up to you to decide. So if your acceptance rate is up over 80%, any order that comes in will have a minimum amount paid to you. In my area, that's $8. So let's say if a customer sends me an order and there's no tip. As we know, my transit pay is $4.45. So what Skip is going to do, they're going to show me the offer, $4.45, but then they're going to scratch that off and it's going to show $8. And they are added on the amount that is missing to be able to give me an $8 order. So they have the top up. They have the restaurant delay. Now, this is something that only Skip has. If you're waiting at the restaurant for more than 7 minutes, then you will be compensated. It is not a big compensation. So don't tell yourself, oh, I can wait here for like half an hour, because half an hour you're just gonna get $4. Like, it's nothing. But at least they have something to compensate the drivers whenever we're waiting at a restaurant and it takes a long time. So that's a good thing. And you also have your gear up incentive, and your gear up incentive in my area is $4. So it's kind of like a peak pay. It's kind of like a Quest. Every single order gives me an additional $4 in my area. I've seen $2 in other areas. I've seen $1 in other areas. It can vary. I assume that they have this gear up incentive whenever they don't have a lot of drivers in their area. So they want to incentivize the drivers that are in that area to go out there and drive. So mine is $4. So obviously we kind of know which ranking I'm going to give for all of these apps when it comes to their incentive. Number 1 would be SkipTheDishes. Number 2 would be Uber Eats. And then number 3 would be DoorDash. So far, if you've been liking the information that I've shared with you in this video, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel. You never know, you might see another video and you're like, oh my God, yes, this is the tip that I've been waiting for. Oh boy, let's talk about the app issues. These are apps, right? We all know with anything IT, that is my background, information technology, there could be bugs sometimes, but some of them have them a little bit more often than we would like. So let's start with DoorDash first. Whew, DoorDash has a lot of issues with their application. I would say 2 or 3 times a month, the app would crash. Either it wouldn't work, you can't log in, you can't see your pay, you can't complete your order, the GPS doesn't work. There's always something with the DoorDash app. This is why I also say it's very important to not just have one app, because let's say you're out there planning to work and then your app doesn't work. What are you gonna do? You're not just gonna sit there twiddling your thumbs. No, you're going to turn on your other apps and make sure that you're still able to make some money while you're out there. Now let's talk about Uber Eats. I have rarely seen the Uber Eats app crash. I think I've experienced it maybe once, maybe, if I can recall properly. So when it comes to Uber Eats, I feel like their app is pretty stable. They know what they're doing. No problems there. SkipTheDishes. SkipTheDishes is an app where it has crashed before. It doesn't crash as often as DoorDash, don't get me wrong, but it has definitely crashed, and it has definitely made me miss orders because it's crashed. So in my opinion, the rankings when it comes to app issues, number 1 would be Uber, number 2 would be Skip, and number 3 would be DoorDash. Now let's talk about the navigation system. All of these apps have different navigation systems that you can use. Some of them have the in-app navigation, and some of them uses either Google or Waze or whichever app navigation system that you set in your parameters. First, let's talk about DoorDash. I personally like to use the in-app navigation with DoorDash because I can also get the information on, like, leave at door, or does the customer want me to knock, or anything like that. So I love to keep the in-app navigation with DoorDash, and I never had any issues with it. When it comes to Uber Eats, their navigation system is horrible. I'm just gonna say it. A lot of times it will bring you to the wrong place. I don't know if it's something to do with their coordinates, but quite a few times the Uber Eats navigation has brought me to the wrong location. Also, if let's say you're here and you want to go here, but you're facing this way, Uber Eats navigation will not tell you to do a U-turn on the street and go around the corner. They will send you around the block to go around the corner. I don't know why. I don't know. It's caused me so many issues before. It's made me lose about a minute or two. So now what I do whenever I'm in the app is I look to see, okay, where does it want me to go? And sometimes I would do the U-turn myself, and then miraculously I just shaved off a minute or two off of my time. So this is why Uber navigation, not the greatest. It also sends you to the back of restaurants sometimes instead of the front. So keep an eye on that. That could be dangerous. And then obviously SkipTheDishes. I love their navigation. First of all, you have the customer's address directly there on your offer screen. But then also when you click on the navigation, it opens up in Google Maps. And I've had no issues with Google Maps. So I personally love the navigation system with SkipTheDishes. So in my opinion, when it comes to navigation, my ranking, it's kind of a tie between DoorDash and SkipTheDishes. But I would say maybe SkipTheDishes would be number one, just because I could just click on it and it's right there. It already has the information. Close number two would be DoorDash. And then definitely Uber Eats would be number three. Now let's talk about the drop-off process for all of these apps. Completely different process for some of them. When it comes to DoorDash, you have the full information. You have the customer's address, you have the customer's name, you have any details that they want to give you, everything is in the app. And if ever you have two orders at the same time that you need to drop off in two different locations, if you see that, let's say DoorDash is sending you to customer A first and then to customer B, but you rather go to customer B first and then to customer A, you can jump tasks. So you can switch which customer that you're delivering to first. I love that with DoorDash. You're really an independent contractor. You get to decide which route is better for you. So I love that with DoorDash. Uber Eats now. Completely different story. Uber Eats, you get the information on where you're delivering once you've actually accepted the order. You have it in your hand and then you start your delivery. That's when you're going to know where you're going, the exact address of where you're going. Also, if you have 2 or 3 orders that you're dropping off in the same scenario that I just gave you, you have customer A and customer B. If Uber tells you to drop off at customer A first, you have no choice but to drop off at customer A because you do not have customer B's address. So there have been a few times where I can see on the map, you see a little dot. I am passing in front of customer B's house to drop off at customer A. But since I do not know their address, I cannot drop off the order first. So unfortunately, customer B sees me passing their house on the map and then coming back to drop off their order. So this is one thing that I do not like with Uber Eats when it comes to the drop-off process. And then with SkipTheDishes, you do have the customer address, which is amazing. But once again, if you have a stacked order, it's the exact same thing as with Uber Eats. The only difference is you have the address. So technically, you can drop off at customer B before you drop off at customer A. However, you won't be able to swipe that you did the delivery because they are going to tell you, we want you to drop off at customer A first and then drop off at customer B. So in my opinion, when it comes to the ranking of the drop-off process, DoorDash is definitely number one, hands down number one. Number two would be SkipTheDishes, just because we have the customer address information. And then number three, for sure, would be Uber Eats.
Drum roll, please.
Based on my ranking, SkipTheDishes is the best app to drive with. Number two would be Uber Eats. And then number three would be DoorDash. Is that the same ranking that you had in your area? I really don't know. Let me know in the comments what you think based on the different criteria that I gave you. Obviously, if you're in the United States, just sub in Skip the Dishes with Grubhub and let me know how it works in your area with Grubhub with these different factors that I gave you. Now that you know the ranking for all of these apps, you might be wondering, okay, but you told me that it's really good to drive with all of these apps. Yes, it is. And if you don't know how to multi-app and you want some multi-app in tips, I suggest you check out this video here so that you don't do any mistakes that can get you in trouble and get you deactivated. We don't want that. I want you to make the most money possible while you're out there making that money. So don't forget to like and subscribe. Done.